What's up, y'all? I'm gonna just get right into it. A little bit of a heads up, if you will. This is a different type of episode than we normally have. This is episode 174 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. What we do here is have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is 1/4 of In the Image Clothing Company. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. I've done this a lot, 170 times, give or take, before some of the past few. That's what we do. We have deep discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. We're all human beings placed on the same earth. We have one God who designed us in his image, right? The three of our 5-word company name as a whole, In the Image Clothing Company. Jesus Christ designed our bodies. There's only one way they could ever work. And on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, we allow the body to work. That's our point. That's the focus. It's not to do with and never about fashion. It doesn't mean that we can't look good and dress well in ways, but that's not the focus. The focus is allowing our gift from God, the only thing that we have. An episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Truly, our human bodies are the only thing we ever are actually promised in this life, because they are what determine us being able to have a physical life, and just allowing them to work the only way that they ever could. As I say, the human body is just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space. There's a center line to it. The sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and our jaw, naturally stabilizing the entire body, not just the head, but the musculature of our jaw and its centered position stabilizes out to our fingertips, down to our feet. And well, this episode is titled In the Image Clothing Company's Rotated Seam Modification. Something I've been doing since before founding In the Image Clothing Company a little over a year ago, from today's date back. As I said, if I did, if not, I'll say it now. Either way, I'm saying it. Today's the 1st of November, 2025. And I've been doing this back when I was just Evan Strong, making videos on how clothing affects the body. And then now we've had In the Image Clothing Company. I'm in this for life as what I label myself as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. But I'll be leading this. I'll be here for my lifetime. Okay. Running In the Image Clothing Company. And this is one of the biggest things. There are a lot of things. This is just, not that it's a problem, but this is out of transparency. It would be very, very beneficial to do what I'm doing here. Not that I have been late on doing this, but I understand, I talk about how we give a lot of free modifications in clothing because we have to have our clothing fitting us correct and staying centered and being made from ideally 100% natural materials, because our bodies are natural. Okay, natural, neutral, and normal are synonyms within the human being. In addition to having a center line to our body where all the musculature connects from the outside of the shoulder into the sternum on both sides in the center of the front of the body, from the outside of the shoulder into the spine on both sides in the rear of the body. We have a center line, feet grip arches inward, keeping us vertical. They do this on Earth's gravity. Our body has to stay centered on Earth's center of gravity. So a lot of what we do when we talk about on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, the anatomy of the human body in depth, even things that aren't to do with clothing, we just allow the body to work through all things. We discuss eating, sleeping, standing, walking, breathing, sitting, hydration, but everything we do as a human being. And we do the same thing on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, another one of our 4s where we let dogs stay natural. We do it the same by approaching the human body with allowing the body to work. We just phrase it differently. We specialize in purebred standard poodles over on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, but we give information that applies to all dogs. Okay, and we do a lot, so check that out. It's an entire 4th of our company. It's an entire company by itself, in a sense, but encapsulated with all that we are as all 4 sides of In the Image Clothing Company. So the point is, a lot of what we do is just deal with gravity. We're all on Earth. We have universal laws, right? God's in charge, and we're actually not in charge of anything, despite what we could ever try to believe. There's only truth. I don't get to tell you what it is because I've decided it. I don't get to decide truth. Nobody does. Truth is there, and we're just here to be able to understand it, okay? And the truth is, with a human body, this just a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space. What I was saying, in addition to there being a center line to the body, there's just a neutral position to everything. From the fingertips up to the elbows, in the forearms, we have from the neutral position, internal rotation, back to the neutral, we have external rotation. Now, if we don't just take the forearm alone, but we take from the fingers up to the shoulder, the entire arm as a whole, from the neutral, internal rotation, back to the neutral, external rotation. This is the same down at our feet, up to our knees, in those lower legs. They're just like the forearms. There's two bones there. Internal rotation, from the neutral, back to the neutral, we have external rotation, from the foot to the knee, and then the leg as a whole, like we discussed the arm as a whole, from the foot up to the hip, from the neutral, which is straight forward, from the pinky toes, straight out from the pinky finger, out the outside of our forearm here, as you can see if you're watching in visual plus audio of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. But we just discussed this deeply. No possible opinion to what we discuss, as long as we're just not saying something incorrect in a time, but there's no way to believe what we say. We're only speaking truth, universal laws like gravity. We just discuss God because we all got here somehow. And we're designed by Jesus Christ, who is our one and only universal living God, the creator of all things. Yeah, there's rotations, okay? The foot to the knee and the foot to the hip. The hand to the elbow and then the hand to the shoulder. And there's just a neutral to everything in the body, not only the rotations, but just the functionality where things sit, like the shoulder height and the shoulder positioning. We have a lot of videos on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company discussing this, and we do this. This is what I'm here for life doing, and this is what you've been able to see from the gift of video, as I word it. Me being the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, you can see because of when God had me do all that I've done through this, at the very founding of In the Image Clothing Company, compare how my body physically, mechanically could operate and visually looked then to any current date. Because even as of right now, there's just an immense change, meaning just able to function now, my body. When before I was in what we get out of under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, chronic patterning and scar tissue. It gets built up through what this episode is about, rotated seams. Okay, that's one of the things when I say imbalances in clothing or oversized clothing. Ropes introduced to the body, shoelaces or drawstrings, potentially just tied one side over the other, rotating the whole body. There's only a neutral to everything. There's only one way the human body could ever work. There's a center line to the body, and there's a center line to gravity. So, with all that being said, and we discussed this, I have up until today's date very, very thoroughly in many, many ways. We've got hundreds and hundreds of videos on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company alone, where I've really, really, really gone in depth with a lot of what I've said in here about the human body. That's the point, right? Allowing the body to work. Also an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. If you'd like some context, that's one place where you can go to get that, okay? Rotated seams. I mentioned a lot of things are only decades old as of today's date. I make some big claims. Stretching is damaging to the body. But there's only a neutral position to everything. You stretch farther outside of one direction from the neutral, and you've gone too far from the neutral because the other side needs the same amount of distance. There's a neutral. So stretching damages the body. Musculature only contracts, meaning getting shorter. There's opposing muscles to everything, like the elbow joint. The bicep contracts, while the tricep on the opposite side just relaxes. It doesn't push away, it only just relaxes. And then the tricep contracts, while the bicep relaxes. So, yeah, stretching is damaging to the body. Stretch in clothing is something that only exists from today's date back, just for decades. As of now, that's worded differently than how I normally do. It's only decades old, though. There was no such thing as the materials that clothing's even made out of nowadays until they invented them decades ago. These unnatural materials, one of the three things that are just how the body works, right? Neutral, natural, and normal, they're synonyms in how the body works. The goal is natural in all the ways that we discuss both dogs and human beings under In the Image Clothing Company. So, yeah. Stretch goes the opposite direction of the only way muscles could ever work. and it's often in our clothing. So we have to do all that we can to have our clothing be made from 100% natural materials, because that's all that was ever possibly able to even be made out of until decades ago anyway. As of me saying this right now, we've had human beings on the earth for however long human beings have been on the earth before 2025, right? Wearing clothing since the first man and woman, Adam and Eve. But yes. One thing that happens with modern design is we have clothing that's made from machinery. Fairly new, and these designs are definitely quite new. And so what'll happen is things will be going down a conveyor belt and being stitched by a robot, truly. And we'll have what's called, or what we call under In the Image Clothing Company at least, because this is just what it is, rotated seams. So, this is a t-shirt that actually says SeaWorld on it. Shout out to SeaWorld. Registered trademark, right? There's one in Florida. I think there's also one in San Diego, California. Here in the United States of America, wherever else, if there is anywhere else on the earth. SeaWorld shirt. I bought it used at the Deseret Industries thrift store. But this is what I'll show, documented under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, because what I was saying earlier about how there's give or take 3 videos, the past few here, In the Image Clothing Company's shoelace technique, the only way the human feet are shaped. We just title it In the Image Clothing Company's, right? In the Image Clothing Company's dreaded collar seam modification, we just talk about for human beings and dogs, keeping collars centered. There's just musculature and tendons going up through our neck that our top is around that opposes center line, and it has to stay even. Otherwise, that affects our entire body. And these are things that I've been doing, and these are the things that I founded In the Image Clothing Company on a little over a year ago, right? Evan Strong, as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, in this for life, this is what we do, because there's only one way the human body could ever work. But what happens is machine-stitched clothing, or if you do it by hand, or however it happens, if we have seams that rotate, meaning a seam comes down and then it twists and gets pinned flat, it's only pinned in one direction. That's why I make it so clear when I talk about the rotations of the human body. There is only a neutral position. It's impossible, physically impossible. I know people like to believe that anything is possible. Anything is possible with our God. But to us human beings, there's things that are physically impossible for us. There's actually an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Physically Impossible, like opposing gravity in ways that just don't work when we calculate it through physics, and actual things that we have no say over, okay? We have no say. Another episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. God's in charge, and he put some things in place we have to abide by. One of those is gravity. One of those is the fact that there's a neutral to internal versus external rotation. Anywhere there's rotations in the body, and where we have seams is down the armpits, where we have the shoulder internally rotating or externally rotating, and down the side of our body, sometimes we have side seams. I say ideally we never have side seams down like our rib cage from our armpit down to the shirt tail against our actual body, against the skin of our bodies. With button-ups, often they're stitched nice and flat, and you probably have an undershirt under it anyway, so it's not against your actual skin, altering how your rib cage can expand and contract. There's a lot that goes into that, but one of those things just with having side seams is another potential to have a rotated seam. So this is what we call In the Image Clothing Company's rotated seam modification. And the point is we have to have everything just come evenly down a function like the arm, down the side of our body when we do have side seams, down the side of our legs on the inside or the outside of pant legs. It needs to be able to go one way, back to the neutral, and the other way, the seam. But if we have the seam come down and then as it gets to the cuff here, they pin it flat one direction and stitch it down, then it doesn't go even to the neutral. And from there, we've got the other side. that this seam can just move. If you can see what I'm showing here, if you're watching in visual plus audio of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, it's available in 2 forms, audio only as well. But this is what we would call a rotated seam. And it happens nowadays because, like I'm saying, factory stitching. It's so quick. You'll put an item of clothing down a conveyor belt, however it exactly looks in the manufacturing plant, okay? They'll stitch one side, and then they'll flip the clothing over, and they'll stitch the other side, going the same direction, and that's actually rotating the whole body to only one side. Because as you can see here, on this shirt, the left side is pinned to the shirt's inside out. So I want to say how it's actually happening so that we can really understand how this gets us into this right-handed patterning, right? We talk about the right-handed world. Clothing patterns themselves are to a degree right-handed, but 85%, give or take, of human beings on the earth are right-handed. And just dealing with gravity, clothing designs, doing things in our life, we get into right-handed patternings, tying ropes on our bodies, shoelaces, drawstrings, just using the right side of our body more, right? That's one of the things that we get into patterning-wise, is just this right-handedness, more externally rotated on the right side, dropped lower on the right side, and farther away from our body's center line, when all the musculature pulls to the center of the body, and we need an emphasis on internal rotation because feet arches grip inward, and there's a lot that goes into it, but internal rotation is the rotation out of the two, internal versus external rotation, that we lack the easiest when we're in patterning, because it's when our muscles deactivate. They fall away from the center line of our body because muscles connect to the center line, and as we come closer to our own selves, we internally rotate. The point is, we just need a neutral between the two, internal and external rotation, right? You can put your hand out, palm up. You can put your hand out, palm down. There's just rotations in the body, okay? In all the ways, from the feet to the hips, from the hands to the shoulder, in the spine, anywhere there's rotations in the body that we could discuss. What happens is, almost in every case when there are rotated seams, it's in this right-handed patterning. And regardless, if it was the opposite direction, anytime a seam's rotated, even if they're both rotated backward or both rotated forward rather than twisting, one side different than the other, what happens is down the right sleeve of tops, for example, the left side usually comes down and gets pinned backward and stitched. So it's rotating your left arm internal or backward behind you, in a sense, okay? And your right side, it comes down and goes forward, and they pin it down and stitch it flat. And then that rotates your right side, if that's the side that it's on, forward and external. So now we've twisted our whole body. Rotations down the arms, rotations in the spine. The rib cage can't expand and contract evenly around. Our jaw that naturally stabilizes our entire body gets totally put off to the side. We put so much focus on the jaw under In the Image Clothing Company because it's huge. Your jaw, is a huge thing to focus on. Letting it stay in the center of your body, letting it stay neutral, natural and relaxed. We talk about it a lot, and we always will, okay? So, rotated seams. In the Image Clothing Company's rotated seam modification is this. Like I say when I discuss things like this is eternal truth. It has nothing to do with us. We're just here to deliver truth. Truth is apart from all human beings ever. God is the truth, the same yesterday, today, and forever. It doesn't matter if designs change tomorrow morning or tonight, and they never make an item of clothing with this type of stitching again. Anytime you ever have any seam in clothing at all, just pinned one direction only, regardless of which way it's going, and regardless of even if it's even on both sides of the body, like both sides are rotating backward down the sleeves, or both sides are rotating forward, or only one side is rotating and the other side's even, and vice versa, any combination of anything, we need to be able to reside in our neutrals, in the whole body, in its functioning as just all that it is physically, a mechanical machine placed onto a rock in space. Okay, rotations, hinges, levers, gravity, a center line, a neutral between all the motion and everything in the body. Okay, this is how we really work. This is how we really work. This is how we get down to it. This is how we rid our pain. This is how we get freedom of motion and movement. It's always on the back end. God designed the body. If there was nothing ever placed onto the body, man-made, the body would just work. Animals just work. But we have things like heels on shoes, like rotated seams, like ropes we put on the body. Shoelaces, drawstrings are the big ones. But anywhere there's a rope in any way on the body. Tying one side of a knot over the other, that's a rotation. Oversized clothing, like I say. Anyway, this is In The Image Clothing Company. We've been doing all of these same things for over a year. I'll be doing the same things and showing the same things for literally ever. That's what I'm saying. No matter what the design ever looks like, anything that's rotating, placed onto the body, will pull it only one way out of its neutral position. Okay? So, it doesn't matter if design starts to never look like this again. You know, what we do though is we come down to just right where it's pinned flat against the cuff, or wherever under any design ever. This information will never change, always eternally applicable to every human to ever live. Nothing to do with me, but there's only one way the human body could ever work. I didn't decide any of this, okay? But I know how to remedy it. And this is how we do that. Once the seam that's just free moving left to right, or internal versus external rotation, however you want to look at it, comes down, and that freedom of side to side motion stops where they pin it flat, we just cut that so that it can move. It's moving already, at least on this design, right? All the way down from where the seam starts to where it's pinned. It's able to move both directions just as freely as just residing in the center or the neutral. So that just needs to be the same when it gets to the cuff, or just anywhere throughout. Like I'm saying, anytime there's ever rotations anywhere in material placed on the body, it's that simple. Just make it so that it can move in both directions, no matter what the design looks like. What we do here, though, is once we come down to the sleeve cuff, this is a short sleeve shirt, right? So this is the seam coming down the armpit and meeting the end of the sleeve cuff. Right when it meets the sleeve cuff, we just cut it there so that it can move. And you can see what I've done, right? This is the armpit right here where the seam is, just like right here on the shirt that I'm wearing. Once it gets down right to the cuff of the sleeve, right where they pin it one direction, you just cut it loose, okay? And then it can move both directions. And no, it's not going to be perfect because now it's kind of uneven, right? From the seam on the actual cuff versus the seam coming to the cuff, because we broke it loose, okay? But do that on both sides, right? And anywhere ever, in pants, in tops, if it could be in socks or shoes or undergarments or whatever, we just have to have freedom of motion in both directions anywhere there's a seam, okay? Otherwise, our bodies, they just need to be free-flowing. They can only ever work activated as a whole. Everything's there on and in the body. Everything has a role to play. We can't drag around dead weight. I'll say it again. The phrase I could never overuse, because it is the truth. I didn't decide it. Nobody could ever be right about it. It's just the truth. God's design of the human being, there's only one way the human body could ever work. And I understand, and we make it clear. Deformities, amputations, major surgeries, birth defects, whatever it could be along those lines that sets your body apart, maybe slightly or maybe quite a bit. There's a universal human design because there's a center line to the body and there's a center of gravity. And in all of our own individual cases, however individual your case could be, we just have to do all that we can to get our bodies as close as we can to this universal, designed in the image of Jesus Christ, human body design. What you learn about in an anatomy class, how we can name off the bones and musculature of the body and the motion of it and how it operates, there's only one way. Structurally, the body really works baseline. And having rotated seams will get our bodies stuck in only one direction, okay? Because they're placed on our bodies. The body is being pulled down by Earth's gravity. Our clothing placed on our bodies is being pulled down by Earth's gravity. Every time we try to reach forward evenly with our arms that are just evenly opposing the center line of our bodies, if there's rotated seams in our armpit sleeves, it'll go all the way to the tip of our fingers, and then that will alter our bodies all the way to the tip of our toes, to the tip of the head, just meaning all the extremities. The human body is something we have no say over, besides allowing it to work. It's physically impossible to train the human being. You can't train to a neutral. You can't train from the neutral to one side of the neutral because there's still the other side of the neutral. This is how In The Image Clothing Company is what we could word as eternally valid, and we could never take credit for any of it. But we point people to who designed the body, Jesus Christ, and then there you go. Okay. And so there you go as well. With that is In The Image Clothing Company's rotated seam modification. Anywhere it could possibly be, in anything, on anything that clothes the human being. That's what we call clothing. So, In The Image Clothing Company clothing will always be great. It will always allow your body to work with every intention that we can put into, at least, our designs, with all the knowledge and information we have behind what we do and who we are. And you have so much context, even up until today's date, of what and how that is and why you would even care to care about our company at all, because you don't have to. But it's like I say, you don't have to believe me, but there is only one way the human body could ever work. I couldn't have an opinion on it, and nobody else ever possibly could either. But we really do understand it here. That's why we're here, okay, for both human beings and dogs. So, In The Image Clothing Company clothing, In The Image Clothing Company dog products, collars, leashes, harnesses, similar things, right? Similar intent, same intent behind human being clothing. So, good context, up until today's date, all the legitimate, I don't say this out of any kind of exaggeration, but physical transformation, visual, able to be seen by people who don't even have a trained eye for, quote, posture, unquote. You can just see how my body has changed under documented, numbered episodes of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. That's just one of the things that we have. The way my body has changed so much is through the truth that we discuss, undisputed, universal, just allowing the body to work. And the reason we are In The Image Clothing Company and what we really do, one of those big things is this, the rotated seam modification under In The Image Clothing Company, okay? Or worded, In The Image Clothing Company's rotated seam modification, episode 174 of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, where we normally have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. But there are certain episodes that are set apart like this because I want them to be documented in our numbered episodes of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. We talk about this stuff often, but it's great to have certain things placed here as well, okay? Big things like this that you have to do, and don't let me tell you what to do, but your life will change, okay? if you start to allow your body to work. But you need to know how. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know. We just don't know what we don't know. I was 24 years old before I started tying my shoes evenly. I was tying my shoes on evenly on each side of my body when there's a center line to it, and these things. And then all of this minute stuff that's really affecting the whole body, but it's very small. These are things that, how could you know unless you were in a role like I am, I guess, right? So that's why I'm here as the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. And that's why In The Image Clothing Company is here, is we do these type of things to legitimately actually change lives forever. It's permanent, right? It's not a walk in the park. That's an episode title of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. Not a walk in the park, but also it will never be the same, okay? Never be the same. Another episode title of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. I speak out of personal experience. An example, you can watch my journey. A lot of this is journal entries, right? Your life as a journal. Another episode title of In The Image Clothing Company podcast. It just is what it is. We just speak truth here. We never could possibly do that perfectly because we're imperfect human beings. But yeah, Jesus Christ, the focus of everything, the only way for anything, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. Okay, so you know a little bit about these two sides of us, In The Image Clothing Company podcast and the main side of In The Image Clothing Company. We also have In The Image Clothing Company poodles, which you know a little bit about, but we specialize in purebred standard poodles. We do a lot with letting dogs stay natural. That's all I'm going to say here, but just know that is huge what we do there as far as the amount and the impact and why it's even a fourth of our company, okay? In The Image Clothing Company poodles. Stick around for the poodles. And then In The Image Clothing Company music, a lot of what I do is show the sizing and setup of guitar to not alter the body, but we do a lot through music as well, and in all the ways that we do, gearing it around the gospel of Jesus Christ. So check us out, man. In this for life, it's not something to take lightly. Your workouts are... Don't think that I'm trying to be prideful like I know so much better than somebody, but truly a waste of time. The only way you can ever help your body do anything is allowing it to do what God designed it to do. But we have things in modern day we never could have possibly had to deal with as human beings until it started being something. And so many of these things, tags in clothing, unnatural materials in clothing, the way clothing is stitched through the Industrial Revolution, right? These things are seriously only decades old. And this stuff will only, if it changes better or worse, it will only get worse for our bodies, okay? We have more problems nowadays physically than anybody has ever had to deal with in history, okay? And these are the reasons. I know it's a bold claim. It's not a claim, but it sounds as though it is. Clothing truly is the only fix to human beings' physical problems. I'd say the same thing if we didn't have a clothing company, because I know how my body has physically transformed, and up until today's date, there's no sales pitch. We don't even have any In The Image Clothing Company products at all as of today's date. So the way my body has been able to do what it has is through the same free modifications that we do and always will give under In The Image Clothing Company in clothing, okay? But we do just discuss life as well and just functioning mechanically as a human body, because every body has a human body, and it was given to you as a gift by God. So they sneak in there, these rotated seams. Sometimes we just don't know what's going on in our clothing. We've been wearing something for a while maybe, and there's seams in it that are really altering our bodies, or just design choices that are really altering our bodies, and we just don't even know. And it's one of those things, like I say, you don't even have to care. It's affecting your entire life, whether you want to put any focus on it at all, right? I say phrases like, it's as obvious as it gets, right? Or it's as real as it gets, or it's as obvious as it is, once you see it. We have to see these things. And I didn't know any of this stuff. I was wearing clothing the same ways that I show people not to until I was right around 24 years old, right? A couple years ago. Yeah. So thank you. Okay, like I said, stick around for the poodles. You don't have to, but just meaning it'll be awesome and huge. And you'll see what I mean by that. There's a lot of context I've already given on a lot of what it will look like just for life in the Image Clothing Company Poodles. But yeah, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. I am here for my lifetime. I mean, I could die tomorrow, but I could also live, to quite an old age. And regardless, I do all that I can to just speak truth. And I do that imperfectly and always will. But the 1st of November, 2025 is today's date. We're in the state of Utah, the United States of America. Events like Poodle Parade events, where you can bring your purebred standard miniature toy, any size of poodle or poodle mix. And, we'll do a lot together. And any events, anything we do, our building, when we have it, like actually physically on the earth, okay, we'll be here in the state of Utah. We live up Utah, as in the Image Clothing Company, and always will. So much nature, right? The goal is natural. As I say, natural, neutral, normal, synonyms in the human body's functioning. Getting people into nature, getting people to the natural version of themselves in all the ways that we do that. And dogs is a huge avenue of how we do that, as well as just actual nature environments on the earth. Through In the Image Clothing Company, we do things for the environment. We do things that you might not have any idea we would do with the name, even just clothing company. But yeah, In the Image Clothing Company, our 5-word company name as a whole. Check out what we do, because we do a lot and always will be doing the same things that we were founded on. All right. So thank you.